Hello and welcome to my basic Fogado guide. In this guide I'm going to be going over Fogado, what he's good at, his growths, as well as other features of the unit. So to begin, let's go over his growths. He has 60% HP, 30% strength, 25% magic, 30% dex, 55% speed, 30% defense, 35% res, 25% luck, and 10% build growth. So just looking at these bases, it's obvious to me that Fogado is a fast unit with decent strength growth who wants to be on something that fixes his strength. So he's actually on the wrong class. He's on an archer, which is fine, but as most people who have run him on Sentinel and eventually Cupido have pointed out in my comment section, and I've personally observed this, his damage falls off a cliff on Cupido, but if you put him on something that has better strength growth, it never should. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now his passive, Charmer, during combat with a foe who was also unit's most recent opponent, inflicts crit -10 on that foe. This is definitely going to be difficult to make use of. It's not even going to be that useful either, because if you fought something and it had a chance to crit you, being able to reduce that crit the second time isn't really super useful, and you're probably better off just one-rounding that foe, assuming it's like some killer enemy, like a killer axe enemy or a killer sword or something like that. So his passive definitely isn't something you play around, and it's not something that occurs often. He's not necessarily a tanky unit, so it's not like he can really make use of this during enemy phase. It's basically like Ivy single-minded, except it doesn't really help you at all, I would say. All right. But he does have good bases, so let's move on. So what are the pros and cons of Fogado? I would say pros, 1200 starting SP, decent base stats when switched into something like Warrior or Wyvern. If you leave him on Cupido, like if you just Master Seal him into Cupido, he's a decent archer, and you can always second seal him into something else later on. So he can just be run as Cupido, and he'll do fine. Some cons. I think there are better units, most of which join in the next chapter. So you can run him, and I've seen some degree of success running him. Switching him to Warrior or Wyvern probably just makes him a decent unit throughout an entire run, potentially A tier. I do think there are better units that you get in chapter 13 that kind of outshine him, like just in terms of raw stats, and I'll go over that. But essentially, Marin is better than him. You get her with 1500 SP. She has 2 more points of strength on him. So, for example, this is a Marin who has leveled up. Let's see, once, right? So let's change her class. Now it actually shows you their bases. So right now she's on her base class. She's leveled up once, and her base strength is 15, and her base dex is 21 as well. So she just has better accuracy. So if we put her on Wyvern, she has 18 strength, 20 dex, 21 speed. She did get a point of speed from leveling up. That's one of the few things she did get. Now let's compare that to Fogado. So if he changes, he hasn't been used at all. So if he just goes right into Wyvern. Wyvern. So she has 2 more points of strength on him. She has 4 points of dex on him and 1 point of speed on him and 300 extra starting SP. So if you just wait a chapter, you just get a straight up better unit on Wyvern. So it's worth mentioning. And then the build, let's see, he has 8 build. Ooh, she has higher build, I think. She even has higher build. Yeah, I think she's like statistically just a little bit better. Yeah, 9 build. So she has 1 more build, more speed, more dex, more strength, and more SP. So statistically, he is a little bit worse than Marin. So kind of like how Lapis is overshined by Kagetsu. The difference isn't as big, though, between the two, potentially, but it's still there. Like, Marin's basically just a superior unit. She also has a much better passive. Knightly Escort is significantly better, because this affects all females if there are 2 or more near her. So, pretty crazy. Gives them hit avoid +5, and I don't think it gives it to herself, though. Oh, to unit. Yeah, it does give it to herself. Yeah, so she has a way better passive. So that's really his downside, is the fact that Marin exists. Alright, so level of investment for the unit. Level investment for Fogado. I would say it's pretty low. It's just a second seal. It's like low to medium. You just basically second seal him onto a better class or run him on Cupido and then put him on something better. Let's give him some bows. Let's give this man some bows. Because we're going to be going over equipment soon. Alright, so on Cupido, he actually can make use of Radiant Bow to some degree. So if we second seal him on to Cupido, he does have a base magic of 9, which isn't horrible. It's high enough combined with his magic growth that he can kind of deal some damage with Radiant Bow, which is nice. There are other units that have better magic growth. So if we put him on Sniper, for example, his magic is 7. Cupido actually sees an increase in magic, so it actually does increase magic relative to Sniper and Bow Knight. So of all the bow classes, it has the highest magic. So if anyone were to use Radiant Bow as like a side option for something to do to ignore enemies with high res, which is something that archers have a problem dealing with, he could be one of the better users of this. So it's not too difficult to get him into Cupido. No, it's a low level investment, just a master seal, so he could pop off to some degree immediately. He's not a bad unit, right? Like, he's definitely not someone that you should just immediately bench. You can run him and he'll be fine. If you run him on Warrior, that's probably his best use case because he has access to B bows on Warrior, which is rare because he has bow affinity. So let me put him, all right, here it is, Warrior. So he still could even run Radiant Bow on Warrior. He has 2 points less of magic versus Cupido, but I think second sealing him onto Warrior makes the most sense. So for level investment, low at most, maybe medium if you consider second sealing medium, but he doesn't require special treatment. He can just kind of dive in, start shooting things, start hitting things with axes, or being a wyvern. Okay, so best classes, now that we're already here. So based on his bases, he has 55% speed growth and 30% strength. He also has 30% dex. So his dex is like average. His speed is above average. Or no, I'm sorry, his speed is high. 55% speed is high. That's not above average. 30% strength is average. So he has decent strength, high speed, decent dex. So he wants something that can kind of help fix his dex, because dex is accuracy and hitting things is good. So in terms of classes, I would say, let me look at Hero really quick just to confirm. So Hero would be an okay option for him. This puts him at 45% strength, 70% speed growth, and then 40% dex. He would be a decent hero. Most physical classes will be good on him. Halberdier doesn't really take advantage of his speed, and his strength is kind of low, so this would actually be a bad class for him. Halberdier wants units with ridiculously high strength that have terrible speed, and that's not him. Royal Knight, I don't think this would be very good on him. I don't think Royal Knight is very good in general. It's kind of weird. It's kind of like this hybrid magic paladin thing that I just think it'll be good on him. Let's just move on. Berserker, this could be useful just to fix his strength. Berserker does have a low dex cap of, I think, 23, but if you look at his dex right now on Berserker, he's not going to hit that for a while, so you could level him up like 10 times on Berserker to improve his strength, but his dex won't really thank you for it. Berserker's dex growth is 5, so 35% dex growth probably isn't the best thing for him. Warrior seems like the best choice, to be honest. Plus 10% dex growth, plus 15% speed, plus 20% strength, and plus 5% build. So Warrior, he would be able to use Silver Bow, which is pretty good. He's not going to be able to use Brave Bow, which is unfortunate, but Silver Bow is quite strong. His speed should easily hit doubling range, and 10 build to start isn't bad. 15% build growth on fixed mode is fantastic. That's basically, I mean, that's objectively 1.5 build per 10 level up. So if he levels up 20 times, which is something you can expect throughout a run, he will be 13 build, which is pretty good. So 13 build, he's at 50% strength growth on Warrior, and then 70% speed growth. And his dex would be at 40%, so it does push his dex up a little bit. He does lose dex switching into this, but if you use him immediately, starting in chapter 13, he should scale well over time. So he would be a decent warrior. And he's actually probably one of the few characters whose design kind of makes sense with warrior. Like looking at it, he's kind of like a Sylvain type of dude. Or I'm sorry. Oh yeah, Sylvain, yeah. He's like the player archetype. Sniper, this would be okay on him. You get 30% dex growth on Sniper. On Cupido, you only get 20. The big advantage of a Sniper over Cupido is 15% strength growth increase. So that's, Cupido gives you 5%. So if you're trying to fix his strength, 35 versus 45% strength growth, that's substantial over a playthrough. That's an extra 1.5, or I'm sorry, that's an extra 1 level per 10 level ups. So it'd be 3.5 versus 4.5. But if you look at it over 20, that's 7 strength versus 9. So pretty substantial. You want him to get strength. It also gives him plus 10 speed, while Cupido gives plus 20. So Cupido is definitely a little bit faster, but he's already fast enough. So Sniper actually isn't a bad option for him, like some kind of crit bow build. Now he does lose some actual build going into this, so could be suspect. I still think Warrior's better. Bow Knight, I don't even think Bow Knight is that good, to be honest. It seems kind of weird. The hit plus 40 is kind of cool, but it seems hard to set up consistently, so I'd skip it. Armor classes, I would skip. It's throwing out his speed. Paladin would be good on him. Paladin's nice because it's kind of like a bruiser. It has good growths. It has 15% health, strength, speed, defense, and res. It also gives you plus 10% dex. So this could be an okay option for him. It would help him. He would be quite fast on it. He would be more of a bruiser with like decent stats that could consistently double to some degree. 9 build, you'd probably want him on sword, or I'm sorry, I was about to say sword lance paladin. You'd probably want him on sword or lance paladin. I don't know why paladin is so inflexible in this way, how it just has like one weapon. It seems kind of weird. It's not even an S rank. Maybe because its bases and growths are decent, but it's kind of like a good medium thing. Wolf Knight, I would avoid. It only gives you plus 5% strength growth, so it's not the best thing for him. It's not going to scale well into endgame unless you do some serious upgrading or strength fixing. And, you know, there's better units to use energy drops on, so I wouldn't put him on Wolf Knight. Griffin Knight, I wouldn't put him on either. Now, he wouldn't be a bad Griffin Knight. He would be at 40% strength growth on Griffin Knight, which, you know, that's not bad. It also increases his magic growth to 40% as well, so he would be 40% magic and strength growth. And if you look at his base, like his starting magic on this, he could potentially be like a sword Griffin Knight with like Levin sword and like a steel or silver, and that would be decent. Probably silver, but you'd have to offset its weight. However, if there's a DLC, or I'm sorry, a well sword you can get that's A rank, because there is a well lance, he would be good on the well lance. Like when you go to the well and you get the free lance, it has a weight of 8 and it has stats better, like 1 point less than silver. So that thing is crazy. So he could use that plus flame lance, or he could use like a decent sword, like a silver sword with an engraving, plus Levin sword on Griffin. And Wyvern would be a really good option for him. Now, I would do sword lance Wyvern, so you can run armor slayer. Maybe like a silver sword or a silver, like silver lance could be his main weapon, or steel lance with engraving. But silver lance with engraving could be his main weapon, and then, you know, you can run Levin sword, you can run armor slayer, you can run rider's bane. So you have some options, you have some flexibility. I wouldn't run axes on him because it'll destroy his speed, and he doesn't have the strength stat to consistently one round on axes without some kind of crit build. He also doesn't have the dex growth to consistently hit high crit numbers without a lot of help from engravings. But Wyvern is a really good class on him. Griffin would be a decent class on him. Warrior is potentially his best class because it actually takes advantage of his plus bow rank. Magical classes on him. He does have 25% magic growth, so I guess you could make him a sage if you want to, but it's not really, it doesn't make sense. Pandreo is much better doing this, like he's already a magic user, so I would skip magic classes. So I would say Wyvern, Warrior, Griffin Knight are all solid. Warrior is probably the best. Paladin is also solid. Sniper, funny enough, could be decent on him because it has better strength growth than Cupido. I think it has higher base strength. Yeah, it has 2 higher strength than Cupido as well. So he actually would be a decent sniper if you're going for a crit build. You would want to run Erica's engraving or a crit engraving that does not reduce damage because you want as much damage as possible. And you would just try to get his crit rate up, get the damage on the killer bow up, and just shoot crits. So this would be pretty decent on him. And if you could get Wind God or something from Byleth, you know, from Bond Rings, you could do that as well. Okay, so for early passives, so you have to look at like the Ike. So what does he have access to immediately? He has access to Lyn and Lucina, so you can get speed on him immediately. You can get speed +3 for 500 SP. You'll have to get his rank with Lucina with Lyn to 9 to get speed +3, which costs like 2,000, 3,000 bond fragments. So 2,000, 3,000 bond fragments gets you speed +3. That's probably the first thing you should get on him immediately. And then you'll have 700 SP. And then you can save up for something like Canter after Chapter 17. You could try to save up for Speed Taker if you want to save up for 2k SP. If you want to go for Speed Taker, you're probably better off just throwing an emblem ring on him and just saving his 1.2k. And then getting 8 level ups on an emblem ring. And then eventually switching him over. Speed Taker would be decent on him. Damage increase from Roy, like strength +2 would be okay. Just to increase his damage a little bit. Pretty much anything, like, depends on how you're using him and what class. If you're on, like, Wyvern, for example, you could do, like, Lance Power. If he's just going to be primarily stabbing things on Wyvern. It depends on the use case, right? So if you want him on Wyvern or Griffin, I would say go for like Lance Power, which you get that Chapter 17, but you also always want the speed. So speed +3, I would say, should be mandatory on him to push his speed up so that he can double consistently. And then outside of that, depending on what he's running, the other passives will drastically change based on the class. So for Sniper, Dex actually might be good for the accuracy and the crit because Dex scales crit now. So Lucina Dex plus speed would be pretty decent on Sniper. And you can get Dex +3 for 500 SP. So immediately you can get him Dex +3 and speed +3 right out of the gate if you want to put him on Sniper for a crit build. If you want to put him on Warrior, I would still get speed +3. And then just save your SP for something better, like damage increase on axes, strength from Roy to increase the bows and the axes. Same thing for Wyvern. If you're going to be running swords and lances and using both, the strength increase on Roy is better than running like lance power or sword power because, you know, you're dealing damage with multiple weapon types. Now, if you just want to go for axes, you can get axe power on Ike pretty quickly, so that can be good. So let's actually just go to these emblem rings. Yeah, so Wrath is also something you might want to go for. Now, it's definitely going to cost you 2k SP, so if you want him to be a low health crit build, you're going to have to beat Ike's Paralog and get his bond to level 13, and then also have 2k SP. So Wrath would be something good for crit builds. Axe Power would be really good and very available for like a Warrior Axe build or a Wyvern Axe build. I don't know that his build stat on Wyvern would be good enough to offset the weight of axes, but you could try it. I would say this is more something for Warrior. And then Lyn, speed +3. Can't go wrong with that, or saving for Speed Taker. For Lucina, Dex +3 is pretty available. Bow Agility, I'm not so sure would be good on him. It just kills your crit chances. There's like no reason for it. Increases your avoid. You could use this as a kind of like covert. Like on the Sniper is a covert, so you could stack this, like if you're not going for crits, but Sniper kind of wants to go for crits, so it doesn't really make sense. But you could stack this with the covert passive on an avoid tile to stack avoid, but I don't recommend it. It seems like a bad idea. But Dex +3 is good for crit builds. For Corrin, you could get... So quality time I only run on like certain units. Draconic Hex wouldn't be bad if you want him to be like a longbow debuffer. You would have to save up 2k SP to do this. So 8 level ups on an emblem ring, and he could get this. So not too far away. Could probably get it by like chapter 16 to 17, I want to say. There's definitely better units to make debuffers. And then this is after... I don't think there's anything good on Byleth for him, really. There's really nothing I would run on him on Byleth. And then for Leaf, build isn't bad. If he's on axes and you run speed and build, that could be decent. That'll offset. Build plus 3 is pretty cheap. The speed plus the build will offset the weight of the axes. Maybe he's doubling with axes now consistently. So that's an option. And then on Sigurd, Canter is generally always good on most units and is kind of a good default to go to if you just want the repositioning. Hit plus 10 can be decent as well, increasing your accuracy. And then Lance Power on a Griffin Knight that lances, or on a Wyvern that lances. Momentum is also good. Momentum, if you're single hitting, Momentum is generally better than a power ability, because if you're single hitting, even if you're like power 2, that's plus 4 damage, whereas with Momentum, most units have 5 to 6 movement, so that's plus 5 to 6 damage when used correctly. So Momentum could be good for like poking things, and it also is good on other things like Thoron. Some people use it with that. So he has some options for his builds, but overall, pretty decent unit. I don't run him really because I find that Marin's just better, and I like her more just because she's very cool. That is a Marin joke. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. For early emblem rings, like depending on what ring you want to run on him, Lyn would be fine. Ike would be good for crits. Lyn would be good for speed. Lucina, I wouldn't run on him. Corrin, I wouldn't run on him. Byleth, I wouldn't run on him. Sigurd, maybe, for mobility and damage, for the Canter, plus the momentum. Leaf could also be decent for reducing build. So yeah, peace.